So in the previous couple of videos, I have been trying to compile a list of the most affordable yet still well-performing micro four thirds lenses out there. I haven't touched a lot of subjects since I only spoke about the 14 to 42 Zuiko, the lowly entry-level Olympus variant, and well, a big contender to the underdog category, the 45 to 150 Lumix zoom lens. However, I'm about to name the best all-rounder from the micro four thirds ecosystem, and well, I shall spare you the suspense. I believe you know what I am speaking about. It's the Lumix 14 to 45 kit lens. Now, there are a few reasons why I believe this lens is the best bang for the buck unit out there, and we shall cover them in this video. So stick around and find out why I think this is the best option currently for a micro four thirds camera. So there are many reasons why I believe this lens to be the best option and the best all-round performer, the best bang for the buck variant out there. And I shall cover them in this episode, and along with that I shall tell you a bit of an anecdote as to why I own not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 micro four thirds Lumix 14 to 45 lenses. And stick around to the end because this is pretty important. It pertains to the value of the thing. However, for now, let's move on with the review and try to explain why it's so important to pair this lens with a micro four thirds camera in 2026. So first thing I would like to discuss is build quality, but we need to address a bit of context in order to clarify all the aspects of this particular lens. So this was actually launched, I believe, with the G1, and it was the first micro four thirds mirrorless dedicated lens in the Panasonic lineup. And as such, they really went all the way in terms of build quality. Now, of course, this is not an all-metal premium luxury construction like the Leica variants, or rather the Lumix G ones. However, there are still some important aspects to note. First of all, the lens mount is actually metal compared to plastic for the cheaper variants. Either Panasonic or Olympus. It's not really an Olympus thing, so don't consider this as a criticism to the Zuiko lineup. Well, and listen, the feel of the thing, even for used variants, is actually, and I'm sorry for stretching, it is actually pretty good, and well, it's more than good. It's actually exquisite, in my personal opinion anyway. So the tolerances are tight, the body construction is premium, there's painted surfaces, but the paint is really, it has this metallic flaking or hue to it, and it provides a sturdy feeling, a feeling of quality, of understated engineering that's taken to the extreme. Also, I think this speaks in volumes about what this thing is. So let me just try to focus on this little writing here. You can see it is actually made in Japan. So yeah, they really went all in with the quality. Tight tolerances, very well put together, very good construction, very sturdy, very dependable. There is this on-off switch for the MEGA O.I.S, the first generation or the first implementation of the optical image stabilization, which was for the Panasonic at least, offered inside the lens and not in the body of the camera. And well, even this switch is rather sturdy and it's not prone to any defects or any other issues if used intensively, which, yeah, speaks volumes for this lens, at least in terms of build quality. Now, on the downside, there is actually, well, the first element closest to the sensor. The first glass element is not fixed in place, meaning that dust and debris can enter the lens when handled inappropriately and taken off the camera body. So that's a bit of a letdown, but it's not something that you could really complain about at this particular price point. Now, why I say this, now before we touch up on the price and the reason why you should get this camera, now before we touch on the price and why I think you should purchase such a lens in 2026, I believe it's only fitting to start a bit of a testing and do a bit of a trial run with this lens. And well, wouldn't you know it, I don't really own 5 lenses but rather 6. I have another 14 to 45 here and yeah, I know it's getting a bit confusing, so without any further ado, let's get out there and see what shots we can get with this thing in intelligent auto and aperture priority. Maybe take a couple of video clips with the mediocre but dependable Olympus EPL3, as with previous tests in this series. Okay, so I have taken a couple of shots with this Panasonic Lumix 14 to 45 millimeters kit lens, actually with more than one lens, but you get the idea. I have paired it with the mediocre Olympus EPL3 for the sake of consistency, since I have taken photos with the IBIS, the optical image stabilization included in this particular camera. Since the Juico units that I have filmed don't actually offer image stabilization in the lens, I figured this would be the most conclusive test of them all. And well, my findings are actually kind of interesting. I shall touch up on a few conclusions of my own. In terms of color rendering, this thing is very consistent. The Lumix 14 to 45 kit lens is actually the best balance in terms of color rendering. Details are nice and crisp in the general sense. What I mean by that, with an f3.5 to 5.6 aperture, you're not gonna get too many details, but anyway, it's nice and consistent. Distortion on the sides could be a huge issue for these kit lenses. Fortunately though, the Lumix 14 to 45 suffers the least on that aspect. So subject separation is actually one of those things that, well, the Lumix 14 to 45 does not excel at, and mainly it is due to the aperture. At 3.5 to 5.6 you will not get that bokeh effect, though you will get some indication, some sort of subject separation, and it's going to be good enough for, let's say, hobby interests and hobby rendering photos and so on and so forth. I shall put an example here of a poster, a plaque, a commercial plaque with plenty of details, high coloring, rendered in low light quality with a lot of books and shadows in the background, and you can see it mostly performs okay. Zoom performance is also something that you will not get excellent results with, since you have the wide angle at 14mm in the Micro Four Thirds standard, and This is mostly as close as you can get. And well, at the other end of the spectrum, there's the 45mm zoom position, which offers, I don't know, plenty of detail, plenty of plenty of zoom in most everyday conditions, though you will not get nature shots and quick bursts of animals hopping around in the forest and so on and so forth. And for that, I shall put in a picture with a bird a blackbird which happened to go by in my yard, so you can see the actual results. Not bad, not great either. Now, there are several other considerations when speaking about this lens, and well, the wide angle is the biggest one of them all, since you are able to record video content with a half decent camera, meaning 4K resolution, at least in 2026, and pairing it with the Lumix 14-45, you can attempt at creating content on YouTube in a wide setup. There's also the macro potential for photos, though I don't think that subject can really be touched. I shall put some samples here. The details are correct, but there's nothing really exquisite about this lens in terms of macro, and you can't really get too close to the subject considering what you would want to do with it. So having said that, I think it's time to drop some conclusions about this particular camera. I'm not gonna try to sound overly optimistic, nor will I try to take this lens down a few pegs, because I really do think it's the best option out there. But it's also the only viable option out there. Now let me explain this. So in terms of performance, does this thing blow you away? No, not at all. It's actually pretty consistent, and its biggest strong point is the consistency and also the build quality and the dependability. On the other hand, though, these minor advantages compared to a fantastic Olympus Juico 14-42, or rather Panasonic's own 14-42 first and second generation Mark I and Mark II lenses, means that this lowly and humble 14-45 is actually the best variant out there. Now, you can get the Olympus Juico on the cheap for about 60 to 70 euros, or you can get the Mark I 14-42 from Lumix from about 80 to 100 euros realistically. At that price point, the 14-45 is actually too close of a call not to consider, since you can get these types of lenses for about 100 to 120 euros depending on its condition, and you'd better act fast, since these things are actually going to become rarer and rarer. They are excellently put together, they offer consistent performance, and they are on the cheap. Now, there are some other obvious choices out there which I shall try to catch in future videos, mainly the Lumix 12-32mm. This should offer improved stabilization, though it's kind of a plasticky, it has kind of a plasticky feel to it. And also it's more expensive than the 14-45, so unless you really need the portability factor to take this thing out in city breaks and on airplanes and so on, I'd rather stick with the 14-45 and save a couple of tens of euros. Now, I know that doesn't sound much, but in terms of hobby photography, every cent counts. There's also the clear alternative to this 14-45, which is the 12-60 classic Lumix, not the Leica variant. However, that one is almost twice as expensive as this 14-45, and even though it does render better image quality, it's just a typical kit lens. It's the consistent jack of all trades at a higher notch, at a higher tier, and at a better as a better performer than this 14 to 45, but still will not blow this away. Now then, is this the correct approach when speaking about a passion project like hobby photography? I shall leave you to decide that. In the meantime, please remember that I have bought and sold a lot of Lumix 14 to 45 lenses, which in turn has allowed me to hoard and collect weird and quirky obsolete tech stuff, so you don't have to. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.